Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. We might have I think we did. Holy shit, we made it again. We are live and hopefully unmuted. I think we've got everything worked out here this time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the newest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. Today, as like most days, I have got my brother from another mother, my Wednesday night homeboy, the one and only Golf T Vapes here with me. TJ, how the fuck are you doing this fine evening, sir?
I'm fantastic. Ready to do this. Talk about the Fluffer McFluffy sandwich that we have here this weekend.
Holy shit, is this a moon pie of a card we got to talk about here? Oh my goodness. So I know that we say a lot of the times that we're getting a lot of fluff on a card, and generally we're exaggerating. There's just a couple of fights that aren't really that exciting to talk about. And then you get a card like UFC Fight Night China, the event, I guess we still have to call it, that is going on at ridiculous hours this weekend. And this is a whole different kind of fluff. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Before we get too deep into shredding the pollution fest that's happening Saturday morning, Friday evening, we'll start off like we do most episodes here with the news and recent events, the things that have gone on in the MMA world since the last time we saw you fine folks. The first thing right out the gate that I want to take a second to mention, the first announcement that I feel is worth bringing up right away. December 14th, Amanda Nunes versus Jermaine Durandamy 2 for the women's 135-pound belts. They actually talked to Jermaine Durandamy with a couple of different news outlets this week. She's not interested in going back to 145, even with Cyborg gone now, which I understand. Oh my God, the internet and the fucking casuals have just been absolutely out of control this week with the Jermaine was scared of Cyborg nonsense. For the uninitiated, for those who don't know, Jermaine Durandamy said back in Invicta, when Cyborg first pissed hot and admitted to using steroids, that she would never fight her on principle because the steroids that she had done will put a permanent benefit to her physical stature and ability to fight. And on that ground, she would never accept a fight against Cyborg under any circumstances. And then we saw the two of them both come over to the UFC, and that carried on. And still, because she said publicly she wouldn't fight Cyborg, the casuals are pumping their cock smokers. I get it. I get it. I get it. The casuals always want something to go after, and if that's what you're going to latch onto, cool. But for those who prefer facts and education over rumor mills and dumb shits who read a headline, it's documented. Jermaine Durandamy said a long time before either one of them were even considered for UFC, she was never going to fight Cyborg. So that's out the window. But what we do have now is a Jermaine Durandamy who says she is focused, she is healed, she has had the surgeries on her hands that she said she put off for years because she wanted to stay active. Now that she's had a little time, she said she's got all the surgery she's needed. She's back to 100%, and she thinks that she can take Amanda Nunes' 135-pound belt and run Amanda up to become the new Cyborg at 145. Whether that's actually going to happen or not, I don't know, but we will definitely have to keep an eye on that one, because if she is absolutely healed and if she is as good as she says she is right now, this could be a very interesting fight, because like it or not, she was way more agile than Cyborg. She's got much better striking than Cyborg. The thing with Cyborg is she just had such fucking detrimental power in her shots. So when she hits you, she fucking rocked you. It wasn't that she was always faster or that she was always coming from better angles, which is where de Randamie shines as a former kickboxing world champion. So that one, it's a pre-Christmas little gift, I guess it's going to be from the UFC to the fans. Next interesting thing that I wanted to take a second to mention here, Horiguchi, the gentleman who currently holds both the Ryzen and Bellator bantamweight belts, got knocked the fuck out in round one by an up-and-coming young Japanese prospect over the week. I don't know if it's coincidence or maybe a sign, but both Horiguchi and Ioana are both Mike Brown proteges, and both have been getting their better end of the business in their last fight here. So maybe that camp needs to be shaken up a little bit, because it sounds like the smaller folks under Mike Brown's tutelage are starting to struggle a little bit here. The belt was not on the line. It was an exhibition match, so he's still the champion. It's not like he really fucked everything up, but it just goes to show you that, one, there are some legitimate prospects coming out that are absolutely more dangerous than they're getting credit for, but two, never underestimate the opponent across the ring from you, because sometimes, despite having two belts from two organizations on your fucking shoulders, the 25-year-old will catch you with that shot that you don't see coming, and you go night-night in round one. So it was an interesting fight for what it was. It's a neat little highlight for those who might want to go back and take a look here.
There's one thing I do want to touch on with the whole Mike Brown camp thing.
Absolutely.
They have been having a really bad problem with their chins when it comes to the smaller fighters coming out of his camp. This makes me wonder, are they having an issue with sparring?
That's
are people too hard in the paint?
That's exactly what I thought as well.
Why are they allowing that when
too much hard sparring?
Yeah, take it down a notch. Look, I get it. You have to spar in order to fight. You have to take shots in order to spar. But at the same time, if it's a detriment to your long-term abilities, definitely something you need to have straightened out. Somebody needs their ass kicked out of the fucking gym. Whether it's a coach or whether it's the person who's fucking going in for fucking licks on these guys. Because obviously that shit just doesn't happen magically.
Yeah, it's a little too convenient, I'd say.
Yeah. But, you know, that's just my thoughts. I'm guessing there's something going wrong with sparring, because getting knocked out like that doesn't just fucking automatically happen to every one of your fighters. There's a definite problem there. You need to find out what it is, whether it be sparring, whether it be a conditioning issue, whatever the case may be. Go look into that shit and fix it quick.
Yeah, there's something lacking in the training department in that camp that definitely needs to be tightened up, I would say. Speaking of tightening up, though, we did have during this last week the reemergence publicly of the notorious one himself, one Conor McGregor. He did a 45-minute long, painful to watch interview with Ariel Helwani for ESPN MMA this week, where he took full responsibility for his actions. He punched an old man in a bar and he shouldn't have punched him. He knows it. He's sorry. We're almost at a John Jones level song and dance routine now here, where, you know, we get it. You're sorry, but you've got to stop fucking up, because you can only get away with fucking up a lot when you're also a lot in the cage winning, you know, 10 rounds. So, extremely fucking pride-inducing victories. And Conor hasn't exactly been in the octagon a whole lot lately, and when he was, it's not really anything inspiring of prideful shenanigans after the fact. The one thing that I will say that came out of that whole 45-minute headache was that he said that he is not actually retired, even though he said he retired, because fighters are never actually fully retired. They just decide when they're going to stop fighting. And apparently there was some behind the scenes bullshit going on between his management team and himself and the UFC. And it was just like a lot of us thought. It was basically a public statement to get everyone to stop their bullshit. And he says he's coming back. And not only is he coming back, but he wants to go back at the belt again, does not want a tune-up fight, and he doesn't care if it's Khabib that has the belt or Dustin that has the belt. He wants to go right back into the stack. And I think at this point, it's not a realistic possibility. I think at this point, he's been out for too long. The last time we saw him, he came in and Khabib beat his ass, choked him out, got the tap. I think at this point, the best thing Conor can hope for is Khabib to lose, and he gets his rematch with Khabib for contender to who goes back against Dustin as a belt contender should Dustin survive Tony Ferguson, because that's most likely going to be the next title fight. I don't realistically think Conor comes back and walks right into another title shot. I get that they do that with Holly Holm every 6 months or so, but I don't think that that's the level that Conor is at as far as keeping his career valid right now. I don't think that's a possibility. I do see Conor coming back. I don't see him going right back to the top and grabbing the belt again right away, though.
Yeah, no way in hell.
And I'm a Conor fan, so like, I'm not just talking out my ass. This sucks. It hurts for me to say, but I'm also a realist.
There's a couple things I did want to touch on with that. One, do yourself a favor. Don't apologize if you don't mean it.
Right.
Because, look, everybody can see through it. Look, I get it. You have to do some sort of public blah, 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 appease the gods, whatever. Send a fucking tweet. Don't do a 45-minute long bunch of bullshit. Two, there's another thing about this incident that I ran across the other day that I thought was fantastic. And it was either a tweet or a fucking Instagram post or something, or it was in a comment section. Made me laugh my ass off. And it went, and I might be misquoting this, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. Hats off to the old man for taking the fight on 2 minutes notice. I thought that was fucking hilarious, brilliant. And another case of showing that Conor needs to get his shit together for this reason and this reason only. Where did that shit happen in? What country? Fucking Ireland. Right?
In his backyard, yeah.
What do old Irish men do in a pub? They argue and talk shit about whiskey. That's what they do. You fucking know that. It's your backyard. You grew up there. Don't take offense to it. It is what it is. If you want to take offense to it, take offense to the fucking whiskey critic who just blew your shit out of the water.
Yeah.
Take offense to that. Look, I'll say it. I enjoy Proper 12. I am by no means a whiskey critic, though, but I like it for my taste. But that being said, Conor, pull your head out of your ass. You're really fucking yourself here. Don't get me wrong. I know you're going to have plenty of money no matter what because your whiskey is taking off. People are continuing to buy it, whether or not some one whiskey critic and one old man in a pub says otherwise. Fuck them. They're not worth your time of day. You're making way too much money to even think about worrying about one or two people. Just ignore them. Those guys still scraping at the bottom of the barrel compared to where you're at. Stop being a fuck up. Don't be a John Jones. Stop having to apologize. Just put yourself on the straight and narrow. get back to where you were. Just go back to fighting. Just
Right.
fuck it. Go back and fight. You're young. Forget all the business side of shit. Let your management deal with that. If they fuck up, fire them. That's how that works. But you don't need to be concerned with all that shit. Look, I get it. You're the face of the business. You're the face of yourself, the whole 9 yards. But at the same time, go get your shit together. That's all I'm saying. No? Nothing more to it. I have nothing more to say about it. That's all. It makes me angry because I do like Conor as a fighter. I love his personality, the way he promotes a fight. But what he's doing outside, not acceptable for a professional athlete of any sort.
No, I agree. And it almost hurts the fans more than it hurts McGregor in a situation like this, because fans like us want to see him do well and then have to defend Conor against the onslaught of the hardcore fans who will just shred him apart for being the 155-pound John Jones at this point like this. It sucks. I hope that Conor gets his shit together and we get to see him back in the cage instead of on the headlines and on TMZ for a fucking change again. Moving along, the next fight I want to mention real quick, October 25th, Bellator 231 will be headlined by Frank Mir versus Roy Nelson 2, the rematch that no one asked for. Now, as much as I love Bellator and as much as I love that they are absolutely scooping left and right talent that the UFC is letting slip through their fingers, there's a couple of guys that probably could have been let slip and find their way either to Ryzen or ONE FC or make their way to Bare Knuckle or going to open their own gym or something. But not every time the UFC cut somebody did they cut them for a silly reason. Sometimes they cut guys because they just don't fucking have it anymore, despite what they may have done in the past. And this, I feel, is a perfect example of that. Frank Mir is not the Frank Mir of old. Big Country is now just really Big Belly. Neither one of those gentlemen are shadows of their former selves. And the fact that not only are they both still doing it, but the fact that they're getting a headline to still do it, all I can really do is shake my head like, hats off for still wanting to fight. Good on you for being willing to do it in front of the whole fucking world. But at the same time, we talk about this all the time. When is the moment to hang them up? When do you put your fucking gloves down in the center of the cage and say, it's been a hell of a journey, but I'm going to go do other shit with my life now? I feel that both of these gentlemen are literally one or two significant losses away from being to the point where they should be told it's time, whether you want to or not. Neither one of these gentlemen are spring chickens, and they are both putting on 18 in their careers here. Neither one of them have a stroke to spare, as it were. I can't say it enough. I don't like seeing guys that I enjoy fighting Jerry Garcia themselves in the industry. Don't burn yourself out in the public eye for that 2 minutes of fame and that extra couple dollars to pay off the tax man. Use your brain. There's so many more opportunities out there these days that I hope that both of them have a great fight. They both get paid well, and then we don't see either one of them again, I guess is the nicest way that I can say that.
I stand behind you 100% on that one. Don't make it so you can't wipe your own ass. That's all that I'm asking. Don't be that guy that needs a fucking nurse's aide to take a shower, to wipe your ass, to eat. You guys continue to do this. Look, you guys are well beyond your golden fight years. You were both fantastic in your primes for multiple reasons. Frank Mir, former UFC champ. He put away the big man. Whether it was a lucky horseshoe up his ass or not, he did put away the big man.
Yes, he did.
And you talk about big country in the same aspect. May not have been the champ, but he had plenty of walk-off knockouts. And for being a big boy, he gave a lot of us big boys hope because he could move like he was a little guy. He had the balance of a fucking just ballerina for being a big guy.
Could.
Yeah.
Past tense.
Could. Yeah. That's the key here. Both of them, past tense, things they did in the past, were well beyond that golden era. Most of those, where those guys shined, was prior to this newer school of MMA that has come in. They, unfortunately, have not been able to keep up, which is why you saw that all of a sudden there's nosedive. Because they were at the tail end of their careers as everything was switching over, and they just didn't know to hang it up then. Look, I get it. You still had one punch knockout power. You still had some fantastic jiu-jitsu. You're great in your own right. Go do some of the things that you're good at that doesn't require fucking getting punched. Frank Mir, go compete in fucking jiu-jitsu competitions.
Oh, I guarantee they would love to have him in fucking submission only.
Yeah. Fuck, you can even throw Big Country into that because he's a judo guy.
Yep.
He's a fantastic judo guy. So it is just one of those things that is definitely worthwhile. Go look into those types of things. Those are the kind of fights you're going to want to do. But not the kind that you're going to continue to get punched in the head for. Please do us a favor and get rid of being for lack of better terms, a punching bag. I mean, you're turning into a soup can. And I don't want to see that.
Yeah. It's
sad. I wish them both well in retirement. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. As sad as it is, they are both quickly approaching soup can status. And it's not something that any MMA fan wants to see. Like, we don't want to see our fucking heroes turn into shaky, rumbly mumble bags. Like, we want to see guys who can still go and intelligently speak about the sport, guys that can address their own Hall of Fame speech without having someone bring them their spectacles. Without having a fucking teleprompter 4 inches from their face. Like, we're quickly approaching that point here. But moving along to the next kind of polar opposite of that fight announcement that I want to take a minute to talk about here. Instead of talking about two geriatric gentlemen who should not be fighting, the next fight I want to talk about real quick that was just confirmed this week. There's one particular gentleman in the UFC that we all know had a lot of potential, but like a lot of other young up-and-comers, was just cutting too much fucking weight to try and give himself that bigger advantage in a weight class, and it didn't work. And we saw it kind of seem all right and then spiral quickly down. Talking, of course, about the Vanilla Gorilla, the one we've got left in the UFC anyway, not Chase Sherman. Darren Till. The time has finally come. The fans can finally breathe that sigh of relief. Darren Till has officially left the welterweight class. He is now officially a 185-pound fighter. And as is the case with most situations like this that we see in the UFC lately, when a gentleman goes up, they're not giving him a tune-up fight. They're not throwing him a warm-up. They're throwing these guys right to the fucking sharks when they jump weight classes. And this is no exception. We just found out that the Madison Square Garden card at 244, November 2nd, will be headlined by the 185-pound debut of one Darren Till against Kelvin Gastelum. They're throwing him right into the deep water, right against the former title contender here. So they're not giving him any walk-off room, any easy chance to just do what he wants and try and make his big splash. They're throwing him right to the top of the stack. I don't know how he pulled that off, but when they were talking to Dana about it yesterday, Dana said that fight is A, absolutely happening, and B, the fight that Till personally asked for. They had obviously been very strong in their opinions, trying to convince him that 170 was not going to work for him anymore. And if he wanted to continue to get the big marquee style fights where his name's on a poster and shit, it's time to get up to a class where you can do that, because 170 clearly wasn't it anymore. And his response was, well, then I want to fight Kelvin Gastelum. He wants to jump into the stack and show that this is his weight class. This is where he belongs, that he was just playing at 170 because, you know, that's what a lot of the young guys do. They try and cut as far down as they can. And we saw exactly why that's not always a good idea, because sometimes when you suck out too much water from your body, it doesn't go back to your brain fast enough, and you get sleepy-eyed by showtime.
I'm surprised he asked for that fight to move up a class. Look, Darren Till is a fucking gamer, and we know that. After watching him get killed by Street Jesus, though, I don't know how he's going to fare in a weight class up where people are heavier, hit harder. As much as I dislike Kelvin Gastelum, the dude has some fucking power.
Yes, he absolutely does.
So it's going to be for lack of better terms, he's going to have to follow the D's: dip, dodge, duck, dive, and dodge. You know, that's all there is to it. Otherwise, he could end up on the fucking cot again, sleeping. Because as much as going up to a more natural weight class is fantastic, that also comes with, as we've talked about more and more, and we've seen it more and more, people go into that bigger weight class tend to get knocked out because they're not used to that type of power that they're getting hit with. But there's always the exception to policy in certain cases like that, but that's a big jump, 170 to 185. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and we've seen a couple times recently where, as much as your intentions might be there, moving up that weight class does not always work out the way that you planned it. Luke Rockhold. So it's not like just because he's going up to where he really should have been fighting all along is just an easy thing that's just going to go smoothly. This could also still go very horribly for him and could very much derail his entire career progress right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out either way it goes, really.
I'm just excited to see what happens in November, because that's going to be a hell of a main event. I like that as a headlining fight too.
That's what, I was about to say. And I think it being a headline, it's right in both of their wheelhouses. They're both a little bit of a prima donna, I guess you could say. So let them headline against each other. Let's see how it fucking pans out. But moving along from that one, very interesting news, just unraveling over the last 48 hours here. CB Dollaway, one of the UFC, we'll call him a middle of the road or middle of the pack, not the greatest, not a number one contender just yet, not a soup can either. Just received a 2-year suspension from USADA for testing positive on multiple substances. They have not announced that the list of substances will be released just yet, but this is not a we caught you with a little bit of something that was most likely a supplement thing. This was a, dude, what the fuck are you doing? There's all this stuff in your piss. And they're going to slap him to the sidelines, kind of a fuck up. I think this might be the biggest multi-use violation we have seen so far. And that's saying something considering the guys who have been getting suspended over the last year or two from USADA. So, oops, I guess.
There's no oops. There's no fucking oops. You don't accidentally take steroids.
Multiple kinds.
You don't accidentally take a fucking dose this big. An accident is when there's nothing in it because you didn't know you were taking a bad supplement. And that is not a fucking excuse either. You're a professional. You should not have those things come up at all. Period. Not an accident. Fuck him. Crucify that motherfucker just like you would anybody else. Crucify them.
Yeah. And this isn't a situation where, much like a certain Mr. Costa couldn't afford to get his supplements tested, there wasn't even a mention of tainted supplements or testing in this situation. This was we caught you with 19 fucking things in your system and none of them are accidents. You're getting suspended kind of thing.
Yeah, that is just unacceptable. If you're a professional, look, you want to leg up in your competition, work harder in the gym.
Right.
Want to leg up in your jiu-jitsu, work harder in the jiu-jitsu. Go do it after hours. You want to leg up in boxing, hire a better boxing coach, hire a better striking coach. You want to leg up in anything, there's other ways around it. Don't take steroids, period. I don't know what it is that you took because they haven't released it. Hopefully they do. However, they've been kind of shoddy about releasing things lately. So I don't know if we're actually ever going to find out. But, either way, crucify that motherfucker, let him sit on the sidelines, think about his actions.
Right? Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, moving along from the ridiculous fucking suspensions here, we did a little bit longer than we anticipated to show last week on this, but I feel like we kind of got paid dividends on that. We went out of our way, even though we weren't originally planning to do a quick little update that I encourage you to all go back and watch if you didn't catch it last week on the Bellator 225 card that was coming up last Saturday. It didn't get a lot of publicity beforehand, but it's starting to get a little more publicity now. This was one of the first promotional cards by a major organization that has happened like this in a long time. I think they said the last time this happened in the UFC was early in 2012. We had a card with 14 fights and 14 finishes. 0 decisions. Every single fight ended in a knockout or a stoppage. Every fucking one. And some of those fights weren't just stoppages or knockouts. Some of those fights were spectacular.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best cards that I've seen in a while. Bellator, every fight had a finish. There was no judges involved in that card at all. 14 fights, 14 finishes. When's the last time we've seen a card like that?
I don't remember. Like, they said it was a 2012 time. I think they said it was a card in June of 2012, the last time the UFC did that. I sure as fuck don't remember what card it was.
That's fucking huge. Because you know what? If you are a casual fight fan and you tuned into that, it's definitely something that you gotta fucking... it's gonna pique your interest.
Yeah, that was a great first card for anybody who's not as hardcore as some of us may be.
Yeah, to stumble onto that, because I was waiting through all of the prelims for something to go to decision, and they never did. Dude.
Yep.
I missed a couple of the early prelims, so I had to go back and watch them just because everything had finished. I wanted to see what happened. And
I was pretty proud of some of the calls that we made.
It was pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah,
I was quite impressed there.
yeah, absolutely a damn good card for anybody who didn't catch it and wants to get into. I would absolutely give you the Bellator 225 card to go back and look at.
Yeah, it's quite impressive there. I was quite thrilled with it, to be quite honest. I wish anybody who is a casual fan can go back and watch that. Because if you want to actually, or take somebody who is a casual, go back and rewatch the card with them. Every fight is phenomenal.
Watch it with them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from the Bellator 225 talk here, there have been a small series of fight announcements that I'm just going to run through real quick to close out the segment here. The first one isn't so much a fight announcement as a return announcement. We got word yesterday that supposedly by the end of next month, this gentleman will be back in the USADA testing pool and will be eligible to compete again in March when he is hoping to return. We are talking about Anthony Rumble Johnson. Rumble is coming back at heavyweight. He said he will never force his body down to 205 again. And if you have seen any of Rumble's social media for the last year and a half or so, you would understand that he looks like he ate the former version of his self. That man got gains on gains on gains. He lost what little bit of a neck he used to have. Rumble is a fucking monster right now. And the fact that he's not cutting back to 205 means he's going to stay a jacked up fucking monster. I have a sneaky suspicion he's fishing for that rematch against DC at heavyweight, where all that wrestling isn't going to make nearly as much of a difference as it did when they fought at 205.
And he might have learned a thing or two from Stipe with the body shots too. And Rumble's got some fucking power.
Yes, he fucking does, especially now with his goddamn. Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, I'm so fucking excited about this. I liked Rumble. I really did.
Yeah.
Although I do want to take my hat off to him because it was a classy way that he decided to lay him down when he laid them down. But apparently, he wasn't quite done. And apparently, he still had the itch. And you know what? He wasn't into that bad spiral like a lot of fighters were.
No, he really wasn't. I think a lot of why he stepped out was because he just mentally got so fucking crushed from a guy like DC, who he should have, on paper, been able to just walk through, and twice in a row got his number punched by DC. I think that had a lot to play with his mental state, and he just needed to step the fuck away for a little bit. And now that he's seen DC get fucking crumpled, might have restored a little confidence in him, maybe.
I think the other part of that might have been with that stepping away, he learned that I don't need to beat my body up to continue to do what I'm doing here.
That's the other thing as well, is if you've seen him now, he's walking around north of 300 fucking pounds of solid, terrifying muscle and doing some security work on the side for the BKFC, in holding tiny guys back with one hand, not threateningly. So I think you're absolutely right on. I think the fact that now he doesn't have to worry about cutting what is apparently about 100 fucking pounds to get down to the weight class where he wanted to fight. He's doing like a lot of the guys are starting to finally fucking do, that makes us fans so much happier, and fighting in his natural fucking weight class and not diminishing his body and sucking all the fucking water out of it to try and have the advantage. But now we get to see, how does Rumble work when he's at full gas tank, at full bloat? Because we've seen other guys go up and not look as good, and then we've seen guys go up and look twice as good when they're fighting as a big boy. So that's one everybody's going to want to keep an eye on for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited just to see him come back. because I thought he was laying him down way too early, considering the way
Absolutely.
his career had looked. Well, he had a couple of minor setbacks, but nothing devastating where it was a downward tailspin where you went, yeah, fuck, you need to hang it up. So it's exciting to see him back, and I'm fucking stoked.
So the next one I want to mention real quick, I do have to apologize. I misspoke earlier. Kelvin Gastelum versus Darren Till is going to be the co-main event for the MSG card in November. The main event was just confirmed last night by Dana White himself. The main event for the UFC 244 card in Madison Square Garden will be the, and I don't even really think we can call it this because it really isn't, but for lack of a better terms and something that he will appreciate, I'm sure, the unification bout of the welterweight belt. That's right. Colby Cringe Chaos Covington will be fighting Marty from Nebraska, Kamaru Usman, for the welterweight belt in November in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, fuck. I do want to say something about this because this is a difficult one for me. I don't know who I want to get their ass kicked.
Right? I'm not excited for this fight because stylistically, it's not going to be that exciting. Realistically, it's not going to be that exciting. But the thing that this fight accomplishes for me is that it will shut both of these two up at each other. Colby will either have the belt and won't get to do his Marty from Nebraska bit that he stole from Ben, or Kamaru is going to beat the shit out of Colby, and then we don't ever have to fucking hear from him again. Ever. Either way, we're making progress to get out of this third grade sandbox argument that we're stuck in between these two idiots right now. That I will be grateful for.
This for me, it's a no-win situation. Whether one shuts up or not, there's still one that's going to be talking.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, it's a no-win. I just want to know who's next up to beat up whoever wins that fight because this shit is getting ridiculous. I mean, like to be honest, for that main bout, I might have to go put on a bit of waiters because there's a whole lot of shit there.
Yeah, there will. And if you saw the post Colby fight scrum, I guess you would call it, where they actually brought him up to the fucking news box to talk shit to Kamaru in person, it's not good. Like, it's very evident that Colby is playing the heel, but it's also very evident that he's not good at memorizing his own lines and doing his own shtick. But he still tries way more than he should. So we're still absolutely getting an abundance of like bad middle school trash talking back and forth in a public scenario by a champion and potential champion. And
I think the only thing that makes me angrier about that, Colby, come up with your own shit. Look, you don't have to like Funky Ben Askren, but that man is a funny motherfucker.
On his own dime.
On his own dime. He don't pick up shit from anybody else. He does it on his own. Colby, you're not funny. You're not original. You're just a cardboard cookie cutout that just so happens to be in the UFC who likes to run his mouth a whole fucking lot. More 1/3. I don't even. We'll just have to talk about that when the fight comes up because I could go on this fucking tangent for hours. So that when you guys tune in for that podcast, just know that one might be a little bit of a lengthy spiel for me.
But it will be educational because we will absolutely be throwing some numbers out there to verify our opinions. I promise you that much. But the last pair of fight announcements I want to talk about real quick were actually announced. One was announced Wednesday or Tuesday, rather. One was announced Wednesday. Neither one have been confirmed as the main event, co-main event. They're just both being made public this week. So we'll see where they shake out. The first one I want to talk about is young up-and-comers going to fucking war that I am very excited to see. Matt Sales versus Bryce Doug Nasty Mitchell. If you don't know Bryce Mitchell's story, and you're watching this live, when we're done, go look him up. I promise you won't be disappointed. If you're watching this on a replay, pause this video right now. Go look into Bryce Mitchell. 5 minutes is all you'll need, and you're going to fall in love with this fucking kid, because not only is he a badass, not only is he legit as it gets, he might be one of the toughest motherfuckers I've ever heard about in my life. Just look at the drill incident alone, and if that doesn't give you newfound respect for this fucking kid, we don't need to carry on that conversation any longer, because yes, fuck. So that's going to be an interesting battle unto itself. But the one that has really got me interested to see how it shakes out is the next fight that they announced, and that is the return of the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit, against Mickey Gall. That fight is going to be very, very interesting, because those two gentlemen are nearly the same size. They have nearly the same reach. Despite the differences in their career points, they both also have very similar styles. And I think to see who's going to be able to figure out the puzzle of the other gentleman in that fight is going to be something that's very interesting for me to think about here as well. But
I got one other piece of news that I just wanted to briefly talk about, because I didn't talk about it earlier when we were talking about the Bellator card. And
absolutely.
I should have made it a very, very important point here. If you don't know who Nick Newell is, go fucking look him up. Go watch last week's Bellator fight.
Yes.
We talked about this last week when we did the brief recap and quick overview. Nick Newell, fighter, one hand. He can't even give himself a round of applause, but he can choke a motherfucker out
with the fucking fierceness.
And he didn't even get touched in that fight. Didn't even get touched by the looks of it. He might have caught a jab or two, but considering what that man does punching with one hand and the way he throws his kicks, fuck. Dude,
well, the best part was watching him throw those hands, because his countering was on fucking point. He was snapping crisp ass shots and hitting Corey Browning out of fucking nowhere. So
it was that fight, fucking a thing of beauty. Like, to be honest, look, they kind of threw him, in my opinion, kind of a soup can to see what he did with it. And
yes and no. Corey Browning's not exactly a top 10 guy. He's not, I wouldn't say he's full soup can status, but he's definitely got a Campbell's label.
Yeah, but it was an impressive first outing. The only thing that it was lacking was a middle finger up to Dana White in the post-fight presser, because Dana doesn't want to give him a shot because of the whole one-hand thing.
Yep.
Dude, I'm on that bandwagon. Let me tell you what, that's fantastic to see. I want to see what he can do against a better-ranked opponent. I don't expect him to see top 10 anytime soon.
Yeah, not right out the gate.
But I'm pretty sure they're going to offer him a contract of some sort, whether it's 3 or 5 fights.
That's what I'm waiting to see. How big of a contract are they going to offer him? Because go ask Justin Gaethje how hard Nick Newell punches.
Yeah,
look at where Justin Gaethje is right now. Go watch his fight with Nick Newell, because they fought in the World Series of Fighting. You want to learn about Nick fucking Newell, boys and girls. That man ain't fucking play.
He has fucking, for a guy with only one hand, he has alligator grip strength. Like, that motherfucker don't let go. Once he was on there, you could tell that thing was not coming off. And, I thought about this afterwards. It's probably harder for him to burn his arms out, because he's really only got one that can get burnt out. And the way that he locked that choke up, he was using the one that he doesn't throw with as the one that's really getting the grip and the bite.
Lock in, yeah.
So I'm just saying, there's something to be said for that kid, and he's got the sky's the fucking limit. I can't wait to see what he does. I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see that man run through some motherfuckers and get a title shot.
Hell yeah, I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
And
Not in
that for two reasons. One, I'm a sucker for a feel good story because that's exactly what that would be.
yeah,
Right now, it's a feel good story as is. Kid, one arm, grows up, wants to fight. Everybody tells him he can't do it. Makes a pro debut, wins his pro debuts, gets another pro shot in a bigger promotion. Bellator, they're right now, look, I'll say it. Bellator is neck and neck with the UFC. Maybe not in money wise, but talent wise, they
yeah,
are.
yeah, absolutely.
He went to one of the biggest stages in the world and made a fantastic debut. And with force in the first round. So another piece of news I just wanted to throw out there because I had almost forgotten about that, and I knew I had wanted to mention it this week, but thank God it came to me before we got into shit because I didn't want to have to backtrack. But if you guys don't know who Nick Newell is, please go look him up. Kid is fucking fantastic, and not quite the greatest on the mic yet. Still needs a little refining there.
He hasn't had a lot of practice, though, to be fair.
Yeah, this is true. He hasn't had that limelight like he did this one, and man, did he ever shine! So I can't wait to
Oh,
see
yeah.
what he does. He's definitely he. There's definitely something to be said there about. Well, we don't want to sign you because you only have one fucking hand, Dana. I think that was a stupid move because a lot of these soup cans that you're feeding us from the Contender Series would have gotten their asses whipped by Nick Newell, quick, fast, and in a fucking hurry.
To be fair, though, that seems to be Dana's MO lately. He's almost going out of his way to pick up soup cans out of the Contender Series and let guys like Nick Newell, like Brandon Loughney, go and then try and play it off like I just made him the biggest free agent in the world. No, what you did was missed a fucking opportunity because of your own fucking ego in two situations that both have turned out to be spectacular recently because Brandon Loughney got signed as well. Guess by who?
Weird. That's all I'm saying. Uh, the only other thing that brings is when it comes to his ego, I wonder how long it's going to be before he lets the first man versus woman fight happen because he's going down that road right now.
I mean, Cringe Hudo is actively campaigning to try and fight the bullet. And I'm generally not ever an advocate in a situation where you let a man hit a woman. This would be one of the very, very few times I would be willing to make an exception because I have zero doubt in my mind that Valentino would fucking ragdoll that dumb little prick. And we would all get a great laugh from it. And it wouldn't shut him up because it's still cringe Hudo, but at least it would quiet him down a little bit for a little while and give us that that we all like once in a while.
Speaking of cringe Hudo, there was one other thing I did see he was campaigning for. A one Mr. Dominic Cruz. For what fucking reason? Look,
Yeah.
no offense to Dominic Cruz. I love Dominic Cruz as a fighter. He's a fantastic guy on the mic to listen to while fights are going on. Why the fuck do you need a tune-up fight? No, your job is to defend that belt. Shut the fuck up. Go defend the belt. Maybe you're afraid of somebody who's coming up. That's my thoughts on that. Be afraid, motherfucker. Be afraid. The Grim Reaper is coming. Who it's going to be, I'm not sure yet, but I'm sure somebody's going to get a hold of your ass and you are not going to like it.
Well, and the best part about that was, I don't know if you caught that, Dominic Cruz actually responded to that just a few hours ago. His response was, and I quote, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember the exact quote, "You're not in my caliber or in my class, little man. So go worry about what you need to worry about, and I'll stay where I'm at and do what I'm doing."
Yep. Fucking sad thing, man. That it makes me giggle. I'm gone. If he really wants a big fight that bad, go up another weight class.
Yeah. Well, and on that same page, it almost makes me want to see it happen. Because as cocky as he thinks he is, He's a 135-pound guy who was fighting at 125 pounds. You're not a 145-pound guy. You might weigh closer to 145 pounds, but you're not a 145-pound fighter. That's a whole different animal that you have no knowledge about whatsoever. You're not BJ Penn. You can't climb this many different weight classes. Sorry, pal. Gold medal ain't going to save you here.
That brought up one other piece of news.
Oh, you didn't know he had a gold medal?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I didn't know that at all. Who the fuck is that guy? No, but you did mention something else that I wanted to take note of and say why you should stay retired. BJ Penn apparently got knocked out in another bar fight in Hawaii.
Yes.
I just saw that. Was it yesterday or today? I forget. But apparently got knocked out again. Dude, stay the fuck away from fighting. I love you, BJ, but stick to your bar brawls. And even those aren't working out for you at this point in your career.
Just run bjpenn.com. He doesn't have to do anything else. bjpenn.com breaks stories in the MMA world just as quickly as Sherdog or Bloody Elbow or MMA Fighting or ESPN. Just stick with running the website, run a gym. Don't fight anyone anymore, BJ. Stop it. Stop it.
Yep.
Fuck.
That's enough of my news because now before more shit starts popping in my head, but just something I wanted to throw out there. But back to the original point. Nick Newell. That's who we were fucking talking about. Rest of these motherfuckers, fuck them all. Nick Newell. Go watch that guy. Get on that bandwagon because, man, that's something fucking special. Whether he does well or not, my fucking hat's off to him because, you know, he came in fucking guns a-blazing. That's the only way to go. If you're going to do it right. Nick Newell did it right.
Hell yes. Absolutely. So that's going to bring us into the meat and potatoes of this particular episode here. The strange but still happening reason that we are talking about this particular episode, that being UFC Fight Night 157 / the most polluted card 2019 in Shenzhen, China. Andrade versus Zhang. Now, like I alluded to a little bit in the beginning, quite often, especially lately, we have talked about UFC cards and we have, you know, made jokes, made comments about how there's a lot of filler fights. There's a lot of fluff. These cards are full of fluff. There's fluffiness in the fights, in the cards. And for the most part, that's generally in jest because most cards that are being put on, because we get so many nowadays, have a fight, sometimes 2 or 3, even more if there's a bigger card and there's an early prelim as well. They've got a couple of fights where it's a no-name fighter or it's an up-and-coming prospect or it's a local guy because they're trying to go after the people in the market where the event is taking place. Generally, when we say a card is fluffy or full of fluff or something like that, it's a joke because there's 1 or 2 that you could do without, really. This is not that. This is, put it this way, what Super Sadiq is to qualified candidates coming out of the Contender Series, this card is to fluff cards. It's on that level of serious legitimacy. This card, although it is a fight night and has a title being defended during it, is top to bottom 100% fluff. You could completely cancel this entire event, and the only thing that would need to be rescheduled would be the title defense. This fight, or this card rather, quite literally struggled to get its own episode. This almost got lumped in with last week's Bellator talk just because there's so little on this card worth mentioning. This is a perfect example of the UFC coming to a place where they're putting on a show and not giving a fuck about the fight fans. They're strictly and 100% putting this show on for the people of China in an attempt to try and bolster support for the new UFC Performance Institute that they just opened in China. My dog is snoring. Wake up, dude. We're not that boring. So the entire prelim card is filler. It's not no names. It's not unexciting fights. It's all filler. We're not even going to justify talking about the prelim card. I don't anticipate there being anything legitimately exciting coming out of the prelims. There's always a chance for a fluke, but no one on the prelim card gets any kind of warranted discussion from me in this episode here. So we move on to the meat and potatoes of the meat and potatoes, the main card itself here. The butcher forgot to trim the fat off this motherfucker as well. What we've got here is 3 little bites of meat surrounded by lard. This is what would be easily returnable as a horrible piece of cut if you were buying this card in a grocery store as your potential dinner. I struggle to justify talking about all of the fights that we're going to talk about. But there are 3 fights that we are going to give a moment to here because we have a card. And I feel like these are the only opportunities on this card to legitimately give warrant to having the card still fucking happen. So the first one I want to talk about, this is 2 very, very exciting up-and-coming prospects in an interesting matchup stylistically because they're both on a bit of a rocky path, but still both definitely climbing up and making progress in their careers in the UFC. I'm talking about Kia Kara France versus Mark De La Rosa. Kia Kara France is a very, very exciting young man. He is very energetic. He is quick in his movements. He is smart in his striking. But he's still a young guy, and he doesn't quite have a fully developed toolbox yet. And then we look across the octagon, and we've got Mark De La Rosa, one of the up-and-coming gentlemen, one half of the jiu-jitsu couple coming up in the UFC, him and his wife, Montana, both making great leaps and strides, both very, very respectable jiu-jitsu practitioners in their own rights. But again, still young prospects and still both have a lot to learn, not quite at that entry tier into the top 15 yet, I would say, but both struggling to make that point. I think with a good performance this weekend, either one of these gentlemen could get a number behind their name, 15, 14-ish in that caliber. I think the difference in this fight, though, is going to come down to, can Kara France last? He's a quick starter. He's an energetic starter, but he's not known for having a long gas tank. Then you look across from him, and you've got Mark De La Rosa, who's got the gas tank, and he's got the great jiu-jitsu skills, but he doesn't have the greatest striking, and he's been known to eat a jab or two. I think this is going to come down to who's going to be able to implement their style more effectively and first, because if De La Rosa can get this to the ground and start putting work in, Kara France might be in trouble early on before they start getting sweaty and submissions are still a very realistic thing. On the other hand, if Kia Kara France can keep this a striking battle and use his range because he's a long fighter against the shorter De La Rosa's had a problem with boxers in the past. So if he can keep it at range and keep it on the feet, this could be a victory for France. I don't feel like that's going to be the case, though. I think in this situation, between the tenacity and the badassery that De La Rosa offers as a tough dude and as a great jiu-jitsu practitioner, I think he also has a great corner behind him, and I think they're going to be prepared for Kara France's style. I think this one goes to De La Rosa by submission early in the second, because I think the first, as in most situations like this, is going to be a bit of a feeling out process. I think we get a sub from De La Rosa early in the second here.
Oh, this is one of those fights I wasn't sure whether I even wanted to talk about or not. Both of them are, they're up and comers in their own rights, but neither one of them are worth talking about, in my opinion. At least not individually. As a fight, it's not bad. It's your typical striker versus grappler fucking matchup. We see this a lot. It's nothing new to the UFC. So stylistically, yeah, it all makes sense because that's the same formula they use for a lot of fights. On this case here, my biggest question is on this: is he going to be Mr. De La Rosa or Mrs. De La Rosa? Or if fucking Mark wins the fight, he stays Mr. If he loses, it's Mrs. De La Rosa because Montana has been putting up some fucking goddamn work. But it is kind of cool, I will say, to see a husband-wife combo actively working through the ranks at the same time. Something you don't see too often, and let alone in the same promotion. Now, France, on the other hand, he's a firecracker starter. And by that I mean, fuse really short, aka his gas tank. Fucking explodes, and he's done. I think this is all can Mark De La Rosa weather the initial storm. If so, I think you're right. He'll end up taking it via submission because he does not have the striking ability. His striking, in my opinion, is still at amateur level. Which, how he's gotten this far into the UFC, I don't know. With that, because you have to have some sort of fucking decent fucking striking to get anywhere in the UFC. It doesn't have to be great. It can at least be defensive striking. I mean, fuck. Even Damian Maia has defensive striking. It's not offensive, it's defensive striking.
Yeah.
But Mark at this point does not. So I think it's just going to be a battle of, does the firecracker burn himself out too soon? Or does Mark De La Rosa hold out? But you're probably right. It's probably going to be submission. I don't see it happening until late second, mid third round, though, just purely on the fact of the whole gas tank issue. And I mean, who knows? Maybe he fixed his gas tank problems, comes into this fight and looks like a completely different fighter. I mean, MMA math doesn't always work. So, yes, we can say based on his previous performances, but he doesn't remind me of a fast twitch fighter. And by that, I mean fast twitch muscles. Fast twitch muscles, they're fantastic for speed, fantastic for power. However, they gas a lot faster than somebody who has a long or a slow twitch muscle, whatever you want to fucking call it. They're completely polar opposites. So, being as he looks like a fast twitch fighter, I have a feeling he's going to end up gassing, but it'll probably be mid-second round, late second round before he actually really gasses out.
Yeah.
That's when De La Rosa can make his move, if he hasn't already gotten beaten up by that point.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I think it's going to play out as well. Just based off of having watched both of these gentlemen start to make their move through the UFC ranks and start to actually get a little bit of momentum behind both of them, I think there's a very good chance that we're going to see De La Rosa come out and just have to weather that early storm that we've seen. And that's a great analogy. I think he's very much a bottle rocket fighter, Kara Francis. He's got a short fuse. He's got a very strong burn, but it does not last very long. And De La Rosa, as a BJJ practitioner, he's got the gas tank. He just has to keep his face out of the way of France's hands. And I think he takes it. That being said, that will bring us to the next fight we're going to talk about here, the co-main event. Realistically, this isn't much of a co-main event. We're talking about Li Jingliang versus Elizeu dos Santos. this is very much a taller striker versus a shorter grappler, very reminiscent of the fight we just talked about here. This one, on the other hand, I feel is a little bit different in a couple of facets. One being that Li Jingliang is a very, very large gentleman. He is a big, big man to step in there and take this fight at welterweight. He looks like he should be fighting at 205. He's a big boy. But secondly, and I think more importantly here, he's one of the two Chinese fighters being featured on this card. He's the Chinese fighter in the co-main, and then we've got Zhang in the main event fighting in China. I think that's going to give him a little bit of an edge, more so than it generally would in most home country or home crowd situations here. Dos Santos is a very, very strong grappler who has legitimate hands as well. But this is one of those situations where even though he's got hands, he doesn't necessarily have the best defense to talk about here. Whereas Lee might not have the greatest hands in the world, he's got good timing and he's got such a long fucking reach that he can do damage from range and he can piece it out. He also has something in this situation that I don't feel that Kia Kara France does in the previous fight. He's got great wrestling and grappling defense that I think are going to be a very, very strong requirement here against Dos Santos, who, if he gets those alligator grip arms around you, is putting you down and he's going to hurt you on the ground. He's a strong motherfucker, but sloppy head movement, not the greatest defense. I think in this situation, not just because of the home crowd, but also because that's going to help as well. I think this is a situation where we're going to see Li Jingliang, damn, it's a hell of a name, take the home victory here by decision. I don't think this is a situation where he's got quite enough to completely knock out Dos Santos, but I don't feel that Dos Santos has enough grappling wise to just completely wear down Li Jingliang either. I think this is going to be one of those situations where it's going to be a fairly close fight, but I think it's going to go to decision, and it's going to give us an example of what's going to happen when you take a fight to decision in home turf. And I think it's going to be Lee's win by decision victory.
Yeah, just another one of those fights that I still see as fluff. I really do. Which, before I get into this fight, this is something I wanted to say before we even started talking about the fights, but I just didn't trip in or chime in, as it were, or whatever you want to fucking call it at this point. Look, UFC, if you're going to do your first ever event in China, this is a terrible way, fucking miserable way to introduce the country as to what the UFC brand is. And I say the UFC brand because that's what you're doing. You're marketing, you're branding. Why? Look, you've done a fantastic job of putting a bunch of local fighters on the card. And by local, I mean people from China, that general area, Mongolia, all of that are there. There's a Mongolian fighter on the card if anybody cares to look. I think they're in the prelims. But this is not how you introduce your country to the UFC. You need to bring them better fights, not a whole bunch of fluff. Don't get me wrong. You have your countryman or countrywoman, as it were, fighting for a title. That's huge. That's a good start. I can say without a doubt the next fight we're going to talk about. That's a good solid fight for your first ever China card. Rest of it, fucking trash. I can't say anything nice about this card. I really can't. It's just so poorly put together. You have a new facility opening there so you can farm fighters. This is not a good way to introduce them. You could have done a million things better, but no, you failed miserably. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, let me go ahead and talk about this fight here a little bit. Li Jilang and Dos Santos here. I think this is going to be a bit better of a fight than I want to admit. Um, Purely for this reason alone. Home turf advantage. That goes a long fucking way, especially when you consider most of these guys who fight in China and you finally get the call up to the UFC, most of their fights are not in their home country or anywhere near it. So a lot of them deal with jet lag and all these other travel issues that come with traveling. To do this at home, that's fucking huge. Now, our Brazilian Dos Santos over here, they do a lot of traveling as well. However, not to the extent that a lot of the Asian fighters do when they get into the big leagues, because a lot of those Asian fighters still train at home. A lot of the Brazilians you will see come to the U.S. and start picking up training camps in the U.S., whether it be at American Top Team, aka fucking Rufus Sports, wherever. But I think in this case here, it's going to be I think there's going to be more stand up than what I would expect out of this fight because I expect Dos Santos to want to take this to the ground and pound, look for a submission. But on the other side of that, the Leech himself, they don't call him the Leech for no fucking reason. Anybody who's gone back and watched a couple of his last fights, he's coming off of back-to-back wins, if I'm not mistaken. One in like June and one in like November of last year. And now to get to fight in front of your home country on back-to-back wins, albeit beating up other soup cans, go back and watch those other fights. You can watch him literally leech the energy out of those people. He's constant pressure, which is fucking makes for a good fight. Somebody who's constant pressuring, it's going to make for a good fight. And he does look fucking massive for this weight class. Go back and look at his other fights that he's had in this weight class. Everybody looks smaller than him. Yeah, they're the same height, but they look smaller. I think that's the only reason he fights in this weight class, because if he goes up a weight class, he's not going to have that reach. And that would dearly hurt his style. So, as far as calling a winner this fight, I don't know that I can. I want to say, I will just for sake of calling one, but I'm going to say home field advantage takes this. The Leech is going to leech Capoeira dry, and I'll say probably late second round, mid third. I have a feeling that he's going to finish it because he's at home. Now, that also brings up a good question on this. We don't see a lot of fight cards in China. How do the crowds react there to MMA versus, like, say, a Japan setting where they're very quiet? They're very, very respectful of the fighters. Are they going to be the loud, obnoxious fans that we see in the U.S. that don't know their ass from a hole in the wall when it comes to it? Not every fan in the U.S. is that way. I want to make this very blatantly clear. But there is a large portion of them that go to fights that don't know their ass from a hole in the wall when it comes to the intricacies of fighting, the ground game, the press your guy up against the fence and drain them portion of the game. A lot of them just boo at stuff like that instead of taking in the intricacies. Are we going to see the traditional, like almost Japanese-esque quietness in the crowd, or is there going to be something for him to feed off of?
That's very true, and that's a good point because we, like you said, we haven't had a lot of fights in China, period. to really gauge that off of. And the last one that we had has been a couple of years ago. So it's definitely going to be interesting to hear how the crowd reacts, because this is absolutely going to be one of those fights. I think more so than the De La Rosa France fight. This is going to be one of those fights where I can see some points of stalling and some, hard grappling, where it's not going to be an exciting fight for a casual fan. Is the crowd going to do, like you said, like a Japanese traditional crowd, where they're going to sit and they're going to be very quiet and respectful? Or are they going to be like a lot of U.S. cities, where the second two guys lock up, you start hearing assholes in the back of the crowd yelling boo?
And that's where I wonder where this is going to go. I'm hoping, because traditionally the Asian culture in general are very respectful to everyone for the most part. So I want to see where this goes, especially being as, last time I checked, China is still under communist rule. So there's a whole lot of respect to be had there, because if you don't, bad things can happen. Yep. You might not ever see the light of day. Bad things can happen again. So I'm wondering how that'll play out in this type of setting. Are you going to get any boos at all? Are you going to get any cheers? What are we going to get out of this? I want to know. That's the one thing I'm most excited about this entire card for, is just to find out how they process fighting.
Right. Yeah. How are they going to compare to Brazilian fans, where they'll cheer for the hometown guys and then literally yell at everyone else, "You're going to die."
Yep. I'm wondering, does something like that happen? If so, cool. At least then we know what kind of monikers we're working with.
Yeah, but, exactly.
I'm kind of excited more for this card just to see how they react, because it's a new market for the UFC. They've got their Performance Institute there, and now you're going to do fights there, which is fantastic. And I'm ready to see how they react to it. And the other thing that I'm really wondering, how educated are the fans there to MMA? Are they the casuals, or are we going to see a lot more of the very well educated on the ins and outs of grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the wrestling aspects, the boxing aspects, the kickboxing, the karate, the Muay Thai? Are they going to be really with it, or are they going to be separated from it in a sense? I'm just excited to see how that turns out. I have a feeling it's going to be fantastic. And to be honest, I'm not sure which way they're going to go. I think if I were to lay money, I would think that this is going to be a very quiet crowd. I don't think that we're going to see yelling. I really don't. We'll probably you're of course going to get cheers when somebody finishes the fight. There's going to be a cheer at the end. That's just common courtesy, for lack of better terms, considering we're watching people beat each other's asses. So, with that being said, I think it's going to be quite interesting just to see how the crowd reacts. But for this specific fight, I say home field advantage gets it done. Late second, early third, and that's just because I have to call something for the fight, as much as I don't want.
I can definitely understand that. I completely agree. I'm almost more interested in the crowd reaction than I am the fights that we're going to look at this weekend. But that being said, that's going to bring us to the meat and potatoes of the meat and potatoes. That is the meat and potatoes of this show, the main event of the evening. Excuse me, pollution. The headline of this card is possibly one of the strangest and most certainly least anticipated and asked for fights of 2019 so far. Jessica Andrade versus Weili Zhang. Jessica Andrade coming off of an absolutely controversial stoppage against the very dominant champion Rose Namajunas. on a head spike that wasn't called a head spike because Rose was holding on to a Kimura while it happened. I'm one of those guys that are in the camp. I don't give a fuck if Rose was holding onto her arm. If you go back and look at that fight, she intended to throw Rose down head first, whether she was holding onto the arm or not. That's a head spike, and that's fucking illegal. I don't agree with the victory being given to Rose. I think, or to Jessica over Rose. I think it should have been a no contest, if not a disqualification for the fucking head spike. She could have literally broken Rose's neck and paralyzed or killed her. And that was clearly her intention from the beginning of the slam when you see how she brought Rose up and over. That being said, Jessica still has the belt right now. So her first title defense is oddly in a very rushed fashion after she was getting her ass beat by Rose in that last fight not long ago, to come in and give a headline to this UFC China card. And they're going to do that by putting Jessica's belt on the line against one of the strongest female up-and-coming prospects in Weili Zhang. I don't feel like this was a very good move to make, not only because this is very much obviously pandering to the Chinese market in China with their potential first Chinese-born champion. Also in the fact that realistically, whether she said she wanted it or not, there should be a little bit of time given, in my opinion, and then the chance should be there for Rose to get an immediate rematch in a fight like that. We have seen much less one-sided fights get much faster rematches than what we're looking at now. And I understand that Rose wants to take some time, and she should be allowed to. But I think the next fight that Jessica should have had to make should have been to defend that title against the one that she took it away from, just like Rose did. But that's not where we are. That being said, if you have watched the career paths of both of these two fighters, Andrade has almost made her career on hovering just under the actual level of greatness in the UFC. She's never been a full-on soup can, but she has clearly and definitively, in my opinion, stayed well below the actual championship caliber of talent that the UFC has. And then you look on the other side of that octagon and you've got Weili Zhang, who has not only been on a fucking rocket ship tear straight up through the fucking list of fighters, but she has done it in a different fashion, showed more aspects of her game, shown different facets to her techniques in every single fight we've seen from her. It's not that we're not seeing her as a whole fighter, it's that she's giving us different glimpses of her game every time we see her in the octagon. She's showing us how well-rounded of an actual fighter, of a true mixed martial artist that she really is. And on top of that, she's strong as fuck. Now, I get that Andrade is known for her power. You look at almost every highlight reel she has, and it's generally her picking some girl up to throw her down. She's not exactly known to be a great striker. She's not known to be a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. But what she is a strong gal who will take you off your feet and throw you out of your element. That becomes a bit of a problem in this situation, though, because not only is Weili strong as fuck, I think she's bigger than Jessica as well. And she also has a very decorated strength and grappling set in her toolbox as well. So this isn't a fight that Jessica is going to be able to come into and rely on her power and rely on her strength and her grappling to throw her opponent around. Weili Zhang is just as known, if not more so known, for being able to throw her opponents around, but she's got that striking background that helps to capitalize on that. She's got a jiu-jitsu background that helps her to capitalize on her grappling and her throws and her strength. And I think this is going to be one of those situations where maybe not because they rushed it, but because of the mental state of Andrade, she's jumping into deep water that she's not prepared to swim in yet. She seems to be very, very much taking Weili Zhang at face value and not putting enough stock, in my opinion, into the real dangers that she presents. And I think this, unlike the last fight, isn't going to have anything to do with the home field advantage. I think this fight is going to come down to just the overall better fighter. And I think in this situation, the overall better fighter is Weili Zhang. I think that we see the UFC's first Chinese born champion, crowned champion in China on a third round knockout. I think Andrade is going to come out too aggressive, too hard, try and put too much pressure and use too much strength too early. She's also not known for her gas tank either. I think Weili is going to have the recipe here. I think she's too strong for Andrade to just have her way with. And I think she's well-rounded enough to where she's going to be able to make her way through all of the offenses that Jessica's going to throw at her. And I think she's going to come out the better for it. I think we see her win her first belt that I believe she's only going to hold until Rose comes back. But I think we see Weili Zhang win her first belt at home in China. Hashtag and new.
I can't say I disagree with you on this one. Start with, Andrade not a soup can. Definitely not world champion caliber. How I'm right with you on the head spike thing here. I'm not even going to go into that just purely because no sense in beating a dead fucking horse. However, what I will say on this here is I think Jessica Andrade is literally a gatekeeper. She's the gatekeeper of the females division of the 115ers. That's all I see her as. I don't see her as a great. She's hovering in that fucking just gatekeeper status. Here, you beat me, yeah, you're gonna get the shot at the title eventually. Weili Zhang on the other side of this house, though, look, anybody who has watched any of her fights in the UFC so far, she is fucking far from being just a contender. She has greatness written all over her. Now, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, there is no way Andrade keeps this belt. If that shit happens, it's probably because some sideways shit happened that you can't foresee. Because if we're going power for power here, I don't think that Andrade has any sort of advantage here. If anything, it's nullified on both sides. However, Weili Zhang, on the other hand, that girl can stick and move. She can strike. She's got a fantastic ground game, and we've seen it already. She's dangerous for everyone in the division, period. There is no one that is safe from her. No one. Look, I'll even say this. If and when the real champ comes back, I don't know that she can take this belt away from her. I don't know that she can. Nailing his look. Let's say, let's go this route with it here. I'm gonna go off on a side tangent here on this one. Let's say Joanna wants a piece of her before the champ gets back. Joanna's got not a chance in fucking hell either. That ship has sailed. Don't get me wrong. But Weili Zhang, that entire division has been put on notice. Has been weighed, they have been measured, and they have been found lacking. Because at this point, I'm telling you, look, there's the one bandwagon in the women's division that I did jump on immediately. The second I saw her first fight in the UFC, I knew she's going to be top dog. And I'm pretty sure there are very, very few fighters that can put up a fight against her. I think Rose Namajunas is probably the only one at this point who can give her any trouble. And that's if Rose comes back. Because we know Rose has had some ups and downs between mental health and all this spiked incident and all that. We'll see what happens here. But I'm pretty sure Weili Zhang walks away with a victory, and I think she's going to finish this fight. I don't think it's going to go to the end. I think this fight ends in the third round. Whether it be a TKO or fucking submission, Weili Zhang is taking this fight. We're not going to see championship rounds in this fight, I don't think. And to be honest, I'm pretty excited to see her take it away from her because it's not something Andrade deserves. Look, nothing against Andrade. She's been a fantastic gatekeeper. She's fun to watch. Because if you want to watch somebody get fucking power slammed, there's your fucking girl, dude. Look, I'm just like every other MMA fan in that sense. I love watching a good slam. I love watching a good slam. There's that fucking sound that when they hit the fucking mat. That is a fantastic thing to see. But that's not what makes champions. You have to have a full toolbox. You have to have the power to go with that toolbox. Yeah, she's got the power, but she doesn't have the toolbox. Weili Zhang, on the other hand, she's got the power and the toolbox. It's a scary fucking combination. At 115, you wouldn't get me to fight him. And I fucking damn near double her weight. There's no way I'd get in a fucking fight with her. She'd whip my ass. No, I'm saying, Weili Zhang, third round. I don't know which way it's going to be, but she will stop the fight and walk away and do.
I completely agree. I have a feeling it's going to be a knockout, but there is absolutely every possibility that she could submit her as well. I think this is just a matter of a well-rounded competitor versus a bull in a china shop. Andrade is the type to literally put her head down and run at you and try and use brute force, whereas you've got a matador standing across from her. She's got every bit of strength, but she's also got the grace and she's got the speed and the agility to move around a charging dumbass bull like Andrade, I think, is going to be. I think we're going to see Ann New this weekend.
You know, let me think of one other thing. This is going to be the icing on what I will call a very bad cake here. Because this fight card as a whole is fucking trash. I am very pleased with this chosen fight as the headliner for China. This makes perfect sense.
Yep.
On a way to introduce into a new market. You're putting a championship fight up for their countrymen
for the local,
to possibly walk away as the champion. And you know what? That type of shit brings people together for those kind of events. That is the way you want to do that. The rest of the card could have been much better done, but aside from that, this fight, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see all of those holes that were exposed in Andrade's game by Rose are going to be exposed once again, and it's not going to end the same way because I don't think that Andrade is going to be able to get her hands tightly secured around Weili. There's no way in hell. I'm just saying, Weili Zhang, she's got this in the bag. That's all there is to it. And congrats to China on their new champion.
See, I disagree just a little bit. I think there is a possibility that Andrade is going to get her hands around Weili Zhang. I think the difference here, though, is that when she goes to give that lift, Weili's not fucking moving. She's strong enough and she's good enough to where when Andrade lifts, she's going to twist and take her down instead. I think this is going to be an opposite of the last ending that we saw. I think Andrade is going to try her power here, and I don't think it's going to do her any good. I think Wiley is just going to embarrass her everywhere that it goes, and I'm hoping we see the Anu. But the only way to find out for sure is to either stay up or get up real early, because seeing as how this fight takes place in China, to see it in the United States, you have to watch for the prelims to start at 3 a.m. Pacific time Saturday, and the main card will start at 5 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. So it's going to be a little interesting, and I anticipate there being more replays than live watches of this fight, but there are still going to be, I'm sure, some. I'm going to be up. I'll stay awake. I don't care. I'm fucking crazy like that though. But it's an odd timing for the fights, but we do have an interesting, if nothing else, card coming up this weekend here.
It'll be interesting for the amount of early that motherfucker is, because look, I'm going to get up early for it. I've got shit to do that day anyway, so I have to be up early. So between doing what I'm doing there, I'll definitely be watching. Especially, I might not be watching all the fights, but I will definitely be watching the main event. And I do, after talking about the co-main event, I think I've got a little bit more of an itch to watch that as well. As far as the De La Rosa France fight, I give two fucks about that fight, to be quite honest. Because if I'm not mistaken, they're having a catchweight fight, aren't they? Because I think one's a 125er and the other's a 135er, if I remember correctly.
They're both fight. It's listed as a flyweight fight.
Oh, it is. All right, well.
I agree. I'm pretty sure that De La Rosa is a bantamweight, but they're fighting at flyweight. It says on the card.
Okay, I guess whatever does it for them.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, that's going to add an interesting factor to it as well, because I'm pretty sure that De La Rosa is a bantamweight. But I don't know. We'll see. But that is all that we have got for this episode. There's nothing less to talk about on this card. There's no other interesting news. So we're going to go ahead and wrap that up, and we're going to tune in to see exactly how this UFC China card shakes loose. But before we get out of here, I do want to take just a quick moment here and thank my brother from another mother from coming along with me and helping me break this card down. Now, if somebody wants to give you an extra fucking pat on the back because your Packers beat my Chiefs this evening, how would they be able to send you a message aside from the $20 charity receipt that I'll be sending you to show my loss?
That's what I was going to say. They can just join that bandwagon and do a little charity work. I'm just saying that's a great way. But no, you guys can catch me Wednesday night, 9:30 Central Time. That's 7:30 Pacific and 10:30 Eastern for those of you who are time zone inept. Also, you can catch me on the Instagrams. You can slide up into the DMs there, because that's probably the only way I'll get back to you. I don't do a whole lot of social media, if any at all. The only time you're going to see anything out of social media is if I'm posting what time my show is and whatever the name of the show that week is going to be. Other than that, come find me. Just hit me up in one of the social medias. Just shoot me a private message. I will get back to you when I get back to you.
Well, thank you as always for your time, brother. Always much appreciated. That is our episode for this evening, folks. So if you enjoyed yourself, if you enjoyed the shenanigans that we take part in on this show here, give us a thumbs up down below. We'd appreciate it. If we made you chuckle a little bit, maybe gave you an opinion that you hadn't considered, give you a point of view that you hadn't registered quite yet, brought something to the table that you weren't even thinking about, maybe subscribe, share an episode with a friend. We're trying to grow this damn thing. On the other side of that coin, if we're just a pair of dumbasses talking out the wrong end about stuff that we don't know anything about, give us a thumbs down. I won't dispute it in the least bit. We earned it. But that is all we've got for this evening. So we're going to call that all for now. Remember, Don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. And he'll send us out the same way that Dana White's sending out the fans by putting this card on in China.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip, and a kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning.